Hey guys, I've made some good progress on this GE set. I finished recapping and replacing resistors on the IF board and have reinstalled it, and it was a major pain, but I believe I have everything hooked up correctly. I also replaced the electrolytics instead of restuffing the can, which is really awkward to get at. I used a terminal strip, and a couple of them I actually installed on the IF board because it just made more sense given how they were used. For example, there's a bypass on the video amp, 100 microfarad 10 volt in parallel with a smaller cap. Well, rather than run a wire all the way from down here over to here to the filter cap, I just put the filter cap right on the circuit board, right where it's used. It's not going to any other part of the circuit, it's just a cathode bypass on the video output tube. So I generally like to rewire and things the way they were originally, put the caps where they were originally, but now and then it makes sense. I mean, they would have done this back in the day, I'm sure, if capacitors were much smaller and they could have put it right in the circuit board. So I have no problems with making that little change. Alright, so let's see if it's still working. And then I want to move on to the remote control unit. Now, if you're going to work on one of these sets, you either have to have the remote control unit plugged in or install a couple jumpering strips on there, because it will cut power to the TV. Alright, cool. It's still working. Here's an addendum I found, or rather this came out of the Sam's. There's a little separate section, alternate circuits, is for the remote control unit, and they show how to make yourself a shorting plug if you need to. Also shows the wiring modifications for the remote control. So there's the power turning motor, which also mutes the TV as it changes channels. And here is the volume control. Alright, so
then we have another system coming in out of the northern plains, and that's
cool.
because
TV's working.
this sort of, I call it a west.
It's a little crooked because of the yoke. I notice there's some waviness in there. There's a simple reason for that. It's because this set relies entirely on the CRT to the high voltage filter, and there is no doorknob cap. So some variations in brightness, that should be cleared up. Being kind of faint, but they're kind of going this way, so you can make it more visible. The yoke's crooked, so they're a little slanted, but I think now you can see that there are some lines like this. That should be taken care of when I use, when I get this back in the cabinet and hook up the full-size CRT that has a grounded coating on the outside, acts as a high voltage filter cap. Alright, so what about the remote control? Well, I've been playing around with it a bit, and I found something very, very handy that they did to aid the service technician. They put some test points on it. So one here and one over there. One of them is on the IF and one of them is on the AF, or detected received signal. So you can put a scope on that. Now, they used to talk about using a VTVM for aligning it, but also I discovered if you put a scope on that, you can see the received signal quite nicely. So here's our remote control, and this is the antenna for the remote, which I took out of the cabinet. So here, when I push the button, hey, there it is on the scope. Very cool. But also notice, nothing's happening when I push it. Well, let's take a look at the schematic for the remote receiver. They happen to put a little frequency indicator next to each of the received signals. That's his reed relay assembly down in here with these little like tuning fork strips and little set screws. those are set up to mechanically resonate at those frequencies. Well, let's see what this thing is actually receiving when I do channel. Looks like about 367, 369, somewhere around there. And what's it supposed to be? Channel should be 375. So we're a little low. Well, could try mucking with the little tuning forks in there, but also there are slugs for each of these buttons. So it seems to me if I back it out a little bit, it will increase the frequency. I've already gone through and checked these, and they are all a bit low. Which makes things there's one common component to all of them. Maybe one of these caps that's drifted off value, and I could try replacing that, but since it's operating otherwise, I kind of don't want to mess with it. Hey, look at that. What frequency are we at now? About 377 or so. And I've already discovered that if I put this a little bit on the high side, it works better. So I think maybe both of the units are off a little bit. It is very cool, I think, to be able to do this. A little hard when you're only changing one channel to get it. But once you kind of learn the subtleties of it, it's not too hard to get on the channel you want. Almost. Alright, so what about the other functions? Well, I've been playing around a little bit with the others. So there's off. And not sure if I got it back on or not. Yeah, the on-off latching relay is a bit finicky, I've noticed. But you can always use the mechanical on. And then there's the volume, which is also a little problematic. So you hear that buzzing. I push volume down. That is the actual read relay. Second from the right, vibrating. But it's not tripping the relay. And I'm not entirely sure why yet. I'm still investigating that. There seems to be continuity in the relay coil, but the voltage going to it is not what it should be. These relays should each have about 10 volts on them. The little number in the square, that is the voltage when you're activating that function. So these relays are around 8 or 10 or 12 volt relays. When I check the voltage coming out here, when I depress it, it's actually negative a couple volts. So I think there's actually something wrong in the relay, read relay assembly, that thing, which is not easy to get out at all. Now it's not all bad because I figured out which relay it is and I can manually trip it. And hey, the volume control motor is turning, and then it stops when it gets to the end. And the volume up function on the remote does work. So, 2 problems remaining. Power doesn't always work, and volume down isn't tripping the relay. But channel's working, and volume up is working. Which is actually better than I was hoping for. I thought that this would be even more problematic, like the motor might have been fried. That was my biggest concern, because that is not something, I don't think you can get that off the shelf. Relays, if I needed to, I don't think are that that problematic. But start some basic things first. I'm very suspicious of that bumblebee cap, and I want to check out that unit. The problem with checking out that unit is I don't really know how to get at it. This side comes off pretty readily, so you can get at the innards, but the other side's it's kind of like a U shape, or it's all bent up. And the parts are attached, like the relays. Each one is attached with some screws, so it's like three-dimensional construction is what I'm getting at. And I don't think it's going to be the easiest thing to service.